Gentlemen, I've got a really fun cocktail for this week that's really enjoyable. Got a lot of really good questions, so we might as well just get started right away. This is going to be a fun week, I think. I'm excited for the weekend, and the making of cocktails, and the beating of Alex in fantasy football. All the good stuff, right? So let's get started with the cocktail, right? The cocktail this week is called the Berretto da Notte, and that is Italian for nightcap. It refers to an actual cap worn on the head, but in this case it is referring to the drink, a nightcap, and this is a really great low alcohol, a low proof cocktail, which I think is pretty enjoyable. It's enjoyable to have that kind of stuff, I feel like. So some people, I think, have a lot of, I feel like some people have a lot of higher proof cocktails, really strong cocktails that they like, which is fine. But I think it's good to have a few low proof ones for evening time, or if you're just not feeling like getting completely tanked when you're enjoying your cocktails. So that's how we get the Berretto da Notte. And the other fun thing about it is essentially it's an inverse Manhattan. So if you reverse the ratio of this drink when you see it, you have a Manhattan, which is a stronger drink. But we're doing the Berretto da Notte, so feel free to flip them if you feel like a Manhattan. Let's get started. It starts with a couple dashes of orange bitters. If you don't have orange bitters, you can use no bitters or Angostura or any bitters you want, really. As you make more and more cocktails, you can start using different types of bitters. You might find that you like a particular flavor of a different kind of bitter, black walnut bitter or a tobacco bitter. So I recommend you always, eventually find the ones that you really like. So, and then we're going to do 1 single ounce of rye whiskey or bourbon whiskey. Or you can even try Irish whiskey or Scotch whiskey if you want. It's just for a Manhattan or this cocktail, it's typically either rye or bourbon that is used. Oh, there are drinks like the Tipperary, which is a spin on a Manhattan using Irish whiskey and some other things. So, and you'll find Rob Roy is essentially a Manhattan made with Scotch, but none of that has anything to do with our delicious Berretto da Notte, which I've said, 5 times now? So that's pretty cool. 2 ounces of sweet vermouth. Now, this is interesting. Not that interesting. I don't know. I think it's interesting because one of the questions I got this week was from Brian, and he wanted to know, Brian Kerr, of course, he wanted to know how much is too much to spend on sweet vermouth. And typically if you're making like a Manhattan, for instance, or if you're making a drink where it's definitely spirit forward and you just have a little bit of sweet vermouth in there, you don't have to spend a lot of money. You can get some basic Dolan or Nolly Prat or whatever if you want. But if you are making a drink like this, it is important, I think. You'll notice the recipe does specify using Kochi Vermouth di Torino, which is what I have here. It's a really good, it's a very good type of sweet vermouth, I think. But it is a little more expensive. It's like $25 a bottle. But if you don't have this, you can still use whatever sweet vermouth you do normally use, Dolan or any of that other stuff. I would recommend it being as fresh as you can. Since it is a sweet vermouth forward drink, you don't want it to be like a dusty old vermouth that you're pouring into it, So, but to answer Brian's question about how much is too much, I don't, I would not judge anyone on spending money on anything really. Do whatever you want to. I would say, like I said, this is probably my favorite sweet vermouth, and it's about $25, $20 to $25 a bottle, depending. It depends on the size of the bottle. You can get a typical size bottle like this. What is it, 750 milliliters or whatever. Or you can get, I think you can buy little 500 or even 250 milliliter bottles at some liquor stores, just because they do that. I've said this before, they do that because vermouth, you need to refrigerate it, and because it's wine based, it goes bad after a couple months. So getting smaller bottles, you don't end up wasting as much if you don't use it, So, all right, so yeah, we got the vermouth in there and the whiskey and the orange bitters. Now we just need to fill it with ice and stir and put it in the glass. I will be right back with all that. And I'm back. I'm using one of my fancier coupe glasses just because I feel like it. So this does, you can put, if you want to put your drink on an ice cube at any point, you can, whenever I do, a chilled glass versus a ice cube. That's just more like how that's recommended by the people whoever made the drink to begin with or whatever. But do whatever you want to. If you prefer your cocktails on ice because you take a long time to drink them and you don't want them to get warm, then do it. Do whatever you want. It's your drink, goddammit. Now this is how I do it. How I do this one anyway. As I'm stirring, I also got a question. From Nick. Nick wanted me, no, this one's from Brooks, I'm sorry. He wanted me to rank the owners that I would prefer, I would most want to be co-owners with, if I were to co-manage. And so, you might notice a theme with this list. So I'll go for the top 5 is BK, Nick, Pat, Eric, and Creed. Now, those are all people who, not only do I enjoy their company very much, like I do everyone in the league, but they really do a lot, not a lot, but they tend to, maybe not so much this last season with BK, but they tend to do a lot of research, a lot of work, preparing for the season, and I think it would be very beneficial to co-manage with a person who is very well prepared, especially because I am not always that well prepared. And it is for those reasons that the rest of the list goes Peter, Casey, Alex, Mark. And then Phil Brooks and new Pat / Jamie are at the bottom because 3 people managing is just too many. Too many chefs in the kitchen, right? But the reason that you got Casey, Alex, Mark there at the bottom is because I think they still do more prep work than maybe I do sometimes. But it does seem like maybe there's less prep work involved there. It could be too similar styles clashing, and it might result in just a really shitty team. So, Brooks also wanted me to ask how impressed I am with the Tim Lester version of Kirk's offense, which is it's the same. It's Iowa offense, right? It sucks. It's always gonna suck, Like that Cade quarterback, he was supposed to be a big deal, right? He was supposed to be good, and he comes to Iowa and he just is not good. And I don't know, can't blame him. I don't think. The final thing with this cocktail is a flamed orange peel. I don't know if anyone's ever flamed an orange peel before. Basically, what you're doing is you're getting a little strip of orange. This might be a little too big. And what you're gonna do is, I use a match, and you get a match, and you're not actually burning the peel itself. You're just squeezing out any of the juice that's still in the rind, which oddly enough has some alcohol in it or something. So it just fluffs up. You'll see just a little tiny fluff of flame. And it just gives the cocktail gives it a little, I don't know, kind of a smoky, fiery flavor. That essence, even through the flame, does end up, what doesn't burn off completely ends up in the cocktail. And so when you serve a cocktail like this, after that, you get a little bit of just a hint of fire, I guess, with an orange scent. It's a fine nightcap to settle down for the evening and drift off to La La Land or Dreamland, or I don't know, whatever the hell you want to call it. Let's see. Nick did have a question, not so much a question, but a request. He wanted me to give us your best trash talk directed at new Pats. And I'm not, it's hard for me to be a trash talker without knowing people very well, and I don't know much about him. If I were to trash talk what I know about new Pat, he's a Wolverines fan and a Dodgers fan, so he likes the color blue. I don't know, is he like a little kid rooting for his favorite color still? It's pretty silly. Or is he just a dumb front runner, you know? Gotta root for the best teams all the time, huh? The big dogs. Well, good for him. Oh, no, I'm sure it has more to do with college football allegiance and stuff. I don't know. Living in LA, all that fun stuff. Yeah, it's pretty weak, I guess. But I just don't know the guy. I don't know what to say. So, that's that. Last question. Pat wants me to know, or is asking, that's silly of me, wants me to know, is asking 2 questions. 1, if I were stuck in solitary confinement for 1 year, what books would I bring with a max of 3? So I thought about this, and I have 3 specific books. 1, it's a nonfiction book. It's Einstein's Theory of Relativity. I believe the way it's written, that particular copy or whatever, is like, it's considered like the most user-friendly version of it, you know, like you can buy it and you don't have to be like a complete genius to really, like, he really tries to, I don't want to say dumb it down, but he just kind of brings it to, in a way that a person can read it and get the gist of a lot of what he's saying. The reason I have that in there is just because that whole physics, that whole thing with relativity physics and stuff, it really ignites a lot of things in your brain, I think, imagination-wise and thought-wise. So even though you would read it, you know, maybe relatively quickly, maybe not, even if you finished it, you know, 1 month into your 12 months solitary confinement, you might get another month's worth of just thinking out of it, just weird ideas you might get, or thoughts, imagination, dreams, whatever, you know. You can ruminate on a lot of it, I feel like, in a positive way. And then I would do a book of poetry, either T.S. Eliot or Bukowski. Charles Bukowski has some really good ones. I think he has Love is a Dog from Hell is a collection of really good poems, or Drowning in Fire, Burning in Water, or Burning in Water, Drowning in Fire. It's another one that's really good poems. Or Pablo Neruda, any poet that you really like, I guess, but those are the ones that I would go for. And the reason I picked that is because poems have so many different, there's so many variations of theme and thought in one single poem that you could read a poem or two and come back a couple months later and read the same poem and take something totally different out of it. There's so many different types of metaphors in each one and stuff that I think it's better for rereadability, a book of poetry, because you can really kind of match up a poem to different situations as you see fit, or thought process. So, you know, read that poetry and then the theory of relativity and go back to the poetry, and you might think it might just totally change your mind all over again, you know. And then the last one is just a straight fiction book called 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. It's a tome. It's a big guy. He's a surrealist writer out of Japan, and his books are so weird and bizarre and interesting and funny. And it's a real big book. It's one that I could definitely see myself reading over a long period of time, and even rereading parts of it just because of its surrealness and oddness. So I think those 3 books, for those reasons, would get me through a year relatively okay. And then he also wanted to know if I could travel back in time to watch any baseball team or specific game, what would it be? I'm a sucker for pitching. I like pitchers duels. I'm one of the few people who would rather see a 1-0 game than a 10-9 game. I just like pitching. I like watching good pitchers in particular. So if I had to go back in time, or got to go back in time to watch any team or game, I think what I would probably pick is I would probably pick any game started by I would pick any game started by Bob Gibson in 1968. It's the year of the pitcher. I think he had like a 1.15 ERA for the whole season. Bob Gibson was an amazing, just an unbelievable pitcher. This was before they lowered the mound. This was what inspired them to lower the mound in 1969, so that people wouldn't pitch with 1.15 ERAs anymore. Because at some point, that's even for fans of pitching, that might be too low. But I would just love to see that big, demanding presence of Bob Gibson on the mound, extra tall, just, bearing down on hitters for, like 300 innings like they did back then. I think so. I think that would be my favorite thing, is to go back 1968 and watch any game that Bob Gibson pitched. I think I would do a runner-up for the Doc Ellis no-hitter. I can't remember what year it is. I'm going to look it up real quick. But if you've seen, there's a famous document, or not famous, there is a documentary called Doc Ellis and the LSD No-No, and it's, 1970, June 12th, 1970, he threw a no-hitter while under the influence of LSD because he didn't think he was going to be pitching that day. And that would be very fascinating to watch that game knowing that he was pitching on acid. I'm sure everyone watching it was like, what's going on with this guy? But to know that and then watch it, I think would be really interesting. He talks in the documentary about like having to walk up to the catcher to get the ball between pitches because he didn't know how to catch the ball anymore or whatever. Like he was just, it was bizarre. So yeah, that would be a fun one too. But I think, like I said, Bob Gibson, 1968 would be my personal favorite. So, all right, gentlemen, great week. Great cocktail. I hope everyone gets to enjoy Berretto de Notte. And if you don't feel like saying that silly word, you can say like an inverse Manhattan. Like I said, just reverse the proportions. 2 ounces rye, 1 ounce sweet vermouth, and you got a Manhattan. So try them both if you feel like it. But I'll leave you to it. Have a great weekend. Cheers, gentlemen. I'll see you around.